Are you old enough to remember life before sat-nav? Remember when you relied on using a road map, lying precariously on the passenger seat beside you? If you were like me, you got lost frequently. I remember a friend who used to use one of those crayons that pilots use to write the route he was going to take on the windscreen in front of him so that he had them ready to hand. All that changed with, first of all, sat-navs and then the software on our mobile phones or integrated into the dashboard of our cars. But do you know how sat-nav works? No, I don't mean you just turn it on and put in the postcode. I mean, do you know how it really works? The Global Positioning System, GPS, is a constellation of 30 plus Earth-orbiting satellites. They weigh between 3,000 and 4,000 pounds. They are solar-powered, and they circle the globe at about 12,000 miles up. That's 19,000 kilometers. They make 2 rotations every day. And the orbits are arranged so that at any time, anywhere on Earth, there are at least 4 satellites visible in the sky. Your GPS receiver in your sat-nav locates 4 or more of these satellites, figures out the distance to each, and uses this information to deduce your own location. This operation is based on a simple mathematical principle called trilateration. But in order to make this very simple calculation, the sat-nav or GPS receiver has to know 2 things: the location of at least 3 satellites above you and the distance between you and each of those satellites. Your sat-nav figures both of these things out in milliseconds by analyzing high-frequency, low-power radio signals from the GPS satellites. And in case you don't know, radio waves are electromagnetic energy, which means they travel at the speed of light. That's about 186,000 miles a second, or 300,000 kilometers. The receiver can figure out how far the signal has traveled by timing how long it took the signal to arrive. And in order for the distance information to be of any use, the receiver also has to know where the satellites actually are. This isn't particularly difficult because the satellites travel in very high and predictable orbits. So the GPS receiver contains like an almanac of every satellite and where it should be at any given time. Now the receiver makes this calculation, and it can therefore tell you your latitude, longitude, and altitude of your current position. Now, if you've ever seen any of those films like Enemy of the State, you'll know that a GPS receiver not only provides you with information on your location anywhere on Earth, but it can provide anyone else with the same information if they're tracking you and they want to fix your location as well. Complicated, isn't it? But you don't need to worry about how it works. Just turn it on, type in a road or postcode, or even say the words, and your handy sat-nav will guide you to your destination. If only life were so straightforward as a journey from A to B. Well, in reality, life is a journey. It has a beginning and it has an end, birth and death. That much is certain. What happens in between is the unpredictable and at times exciting part. We're all travellers somewhere on that journey, forever on the move, growing, learning, changing. In our gospel reading today, Jesus tells us that our real home is heaven, that we are in fact only visiting this planet. As some people, especially those of us who are younger, don't seem to care about where they're going, as long as life is long and lots of fun along the way. To travel is more exciting than to arrive. That perspective on life changes the older you get. Can you imagine setting out on a journey and not knowing or caring where you're going? Sounds silly, doesn't it? And yet many people do that with their life. Life is the longest and surely the most significant journey we're ever going to make. It's therefore important we know where we're going. In our reading from John's Gospel, we find Jesus telling his followers that he must soon leave them, or to be blunt, that he's going to die, and that they must know why. They're confused, fearful. But Jesus explains where heaven is and how to get there. Jesus seems indeed to assume his friends knew where heaven is, but they didn't, and were honest enough to say so. Peter, always one to speak his mind, asks, "Where are you going? Why can't we follow you now?" "Do not let your hearts be troubled," said Jesus. "Trust in God, trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. I'm going there to prepare a place for you. I will come back and take you to be with me, so that you may be where I am." That's John 13:37, 14, 1-4. Like the way a GPS receiver uses trilateration to guide us to our destination, Jesus explains how they, and we, can get to heaven. He describes heaven as a place, a real place. In fact, the word used is caravanserai, which is a word associated with a kind of oasis hotel that you'll find in the middle of a desert in the Middle East. It's certainly as real as any place on a map. But we need three things to get there. We need a special map. We need to know where our destination is and where we are starting out. And we need a guide to get us there. Jesus is the answer to all three. Verse 6, Jesus says, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." Well, I want us to consider these three great claims of Jesus, because they're like three coordinates that identify how to get from wherever we are now to our desired home in heaven. First of all, Jesus says, "I am the way. I am the way." And that speaks of the unique personhood of Jesus Christ. He is a unique person. Life is a journey, and we're all travelers. And sometimes, maybe right now for you, it seems like you're in a desert, because sooner or later we all get lost. We lose our way, and we need someone to show us the way. We need a pathfinder. One of the most memorable films I've ever seen is called The Pathfinder. It's a Scandinavian film with English subtitles. It's a folk story about a family of nomadic people living in Lapland, living in the frozen north of northern Sweden or Finland. They're living in temporary settlements following their herds of reindeer. But their community is threatened by a tribe of killers known as the Tahuds. The Tahuds are from Siberia, from the east, and they live by plundering whoever falls across their path. The story centers around a young boy called Agen. He returns from a hunting trip to find his whole family has been brutally murdered. He escapes to a nearby village, half dead, and is accepted as one of them. But the villagers are afraid that the killers will follow his trail and attack them as well. They cannot decide whether to stay, put, or flee. Well, Agen and some of the men stay behind to prepare to fight while the other villagers move nearer to the sea. There is a fight, and the boy is captured. He's the only survivor. He's forced to turn traitor and lead the marauding band to where the villagers are hiding. But instead, he leads them into a deep crevasse where they are killed. Achan survives, and from afar the villagers see their deliverance. And in a moving end to the story, Achan is chosen as their new pathfinder. Even though he's only a child, he's chosen to lead them through the snowy, blinding desert to food and safety. Ever since I've seen that film, the word pathfinder has taken on a new meaning. Because that is what Jesus is speaking of here. 1,000 years before Achan, Jesus said, "I am the true pathfinder." Jesus says to us, as he said to his friends, "I am the way. I am the road to God, the only road that leads to heaven." Respectfully, I have to say, Buddha is dead. Gandhi is dead. Muhammad is dead. Lenin is dead. You can visit their graves. All of the great religious leaders in history died. But instead, Christ followers worship at an empty tomb. Most of the world tries to walk in the shoes of dead guides and gurus and fails. The difference for Christ's followers is Jesus is alive. He came back to life to show us the way. In a world, therefore, of competing religions and guides, prophets and gurus, Jesus says, "I am the way to God." Not a way, but the way. No other religious leaders made such claims or offered such convincing proof. Jesus said, "I am the way to heaven," and he came back from the dead to prove he knew how to get back to eternity. The true pathfinder, I am the way. That's our first coordinate. The second is when Jesus said, "I am the truth." That's the unquestioned authority of Jesus. That's our second coordinate. Jesus is the way, and his teaching in the Bible is the truth. It is literally our map. A few years ago, I visited St. Petersburg, and as is my custom, I bought one of the local maps. I like to think of myself as an intrepid geographer. I bought the street map, and I carried it around with me for 10 days. And admittedly, it was in Russian, but even with my compass, I still had a hard time getting the road names to match up with those on the map. On the very last day, I summed up the courage and asked a local Russian to help me locate myself on the map. He smiled and told me in broken English that I'd bought a facsimile of an antique map originally printed in 1918. No wonder I'd got lost. A map or a guidebook may be unreliable, defective, or out of date. Indeed, most modern guides have a notoriously short shelf life. Apparently, new books tend to live in the bookshops for 6 weeks before they are remaindered and then pulped. This book, on the other hand, has been the #1 bestseller worldwide for nearly 2,000 years. Have you ever wondered why? Because eternal truth is always contemporary, always relevant. Why follow Jesus? How do we get to heaven? First, because he is the way. That's our first coordinate. Secondly, because he is the truth. That's our second coordinate, our route to heaven. But Jesus promised more. He gave us a third coordinate. He didn't just say, "Follow my example, read my book, bye for now, see you there, hope you make it." No. Jesus said, "I am the way," unique person. "I am the truth," unquestioned authority. And thirdly, "I am the life," the unparalleled work of Jesus Christ. The distinctive work of Jesus Christ was to do what no one else has the ability to do. We are born to live. Jesus was born to die. The last time I visited Russia, I spoke with a former communist who likened their society to a man who falls into a well. His friends look over the edge into the gloom and cry out, "Are you all right down there, Fred?" And Fred responds, I'm okay. And one of his friends says, "What about your arms? Have you hurt your arms?" Fred feels his arms and calls back, "No, my arms are okay." So another friend says, "What about your legs? Have you broken your legs?" Fred feels his legs and says, "No, my legs are okay." "What about your head?" another asks. Fred feels his head. "No, my head's okay." So his friends say, "Well, why aren't you climbing out?" And Fred replies, "Because I haven't reached the bottom yet." That's how my friend in Russia felt his society was headed. They hadn't reached the bottom yet. You see, all religions agree that the world is in a mess. Each has its own way of trying to deal with our desperate situation. Imagine we are like that man who fell down a deep well. The first question, the most important question, is how to get out. First comes Muhammad, who looks over the top of the well and says, "If you only keep the 5 rules of Islam, the 5 pillars, you'll be able to escape out of the well." But in his own strength, in our own strength, we haven't got the energy, the strength to pull ourselves out. Along comes Buddha. He looks in at the top of the well and says, "I can see you're in a mess. The problem is due to pain and desire. If you follow the Noble Eightfold Path, you will ultimately escape these into nirvana." But the trouble is we're still down the well. How is Christianity unique? In Jesus Christ, God comes to the top of the well and looks down and says, "I can see you're in a mess. You'll never get out of there by means of your own resources. I'll have to let down a rope, come into the well myself, and rescue you. I will hold you firmly because you don't even have the strength to hold on to me yourself." Only Christianity speaks of a God becoming one of us to rescue us, to save us from our lostness, our blindness for having gone astray. Other religions say we must work hard to deliver ourselves. Religions are about the word do. What must I do to inherit eternal life? Christianity is not a religion. It's a relationship. It's not about what I must do. It's about what Christ has done. We don't have to do anything because Jesus has done it for us. Religions are all about effort. Christianity is all about grace. God's riches at Christ's expense. Jesus goes on to promise, "I will come back and take you to be with me." And he did. He came back, and he continues to. Jesus has shown us by his death and resurrection that death is not the end of the journey, that we were created for eternal life, a living relationship with God as our Father. And he has given us his Spirit to indwell us and guide us home, to help us to follow Jesus and obey his word. Let's summarize what we've found about this trilateration. When Jesus says, "I am the way and the truth and the life." In his book, The Imitation of Christ, Thomas à Kempis helpfully explains how all three complement each other. Follow me. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Without the way, he says, there is no going. Without the truth, there is no knowing. And without the life, there is no living. I am the way which you must follow, the truth which you must believe, and the life for which you must hope. I am the inviolable way, the infallible truth, the never-ending life. I am the straightest way, the sovereign truth, life true, life blessed, life uncreated. If you remain in my way, you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free, and you shall lay hold on eternal life. That's a pretty profound statement from Thomas à Kempis. Foolish to believe, foolish to ignore. That's for you to decide. Let me close with one more illustration. Jim Elliot was a missionary in South America. He was murdered as a young man along with 5 other men trying to help a tribe of Amazon Indians called the Akua. Before he was killed, he wrote this in his diary. He is no fool who gives up what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. You may feel a fool for contemplating becoming a Christ follower, afraid of what your friends or colleagues might say. Then think through the consequences. He is no fool who gives up what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. Maybe you've been a Christian for many years, but only half-heartedly. Then reflect upon where you are heading. He is no fool who gives up what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. Following Jesus involves entrusting our life with all its warts and its wrinkles to him, a life which we cannot keep, and in return receiving, in exchange, his gift of new life, his spirit, his wisdom, his values, his power, his life, a life we don't deserve, a life we cannot earn, a life we can only receive, a life that is eternal. A life that begins, eternal life begins when we trust in Jesus. Jesus is the one through whom we can experience the life for which we were created for, destined for both now and for eternity. So in the midst of life's uncertainties, its joys and tragedies, Jesus comes alongside us and makes this promise. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you may be where I am. May you have the assurance today of knowing your location in life, knowing your destination in heaven, and by God's grace, how you can get there through Jesus Christ. Then perhaps share this good news with someone who's still lost. God bless you.